One thing that I have to admit from Clem 2, I now absolutely 100% believe in Sasquatch.
Around 11 o'clock one night, I had a road crossing. And I mean, it maybe took 2 or 3 steps, it was across the road, but...
From the misty forests of British Columbia to the haunted valleys of Kinderhook, giant silhouettes watching from the trees, glowing eyes in the dark, real footage, first-hand accounts, and chilling evidence that blurs the line between legend and reality. They're warnings. Footage courtesy Travel Channel. Deep in the dark wilderness, the man thought he was alone until he heard it. Footsteps, heavy, cautious, and too intentional to belong to an animal. Around 12:14 a.m., the stillness broke as something unseen began moving closer to his camp.
About a half hour in, I heard the footsteps again.
A heavy silence settled. Footsteps returned, slow, deliberate, inching toward the trap. Each step pressed deeper, as if guided by something unseen. Then, just before, they stopped. Not close, not distant, just beyond reach. Waiting, listening, as if something shadowed was deciding whether to reveal itself or vanish into the darkness.
I could hear it coming closer to the trap. But whatever it was, it stopped well before it got there.
What was it, hiding just beyond the edge of the camp? Something invisible reached out and grabbed a small tree branch, moving slowly and carefully. Why was it swinging the branch back and forth, over and over again? The dry crack of branches broke the quiet, heavy silence. Then, suddenly, the branch jerked hard, like it was held by cold, invisible hands. A shadow moved just beyond the trees, watching with eyes you couldn't see. The air grew cold and heavy, pressing down on him like it was alive, quietly warning him he didn't belong here. Something old and dangerous waited in the darkness.
And started swishing it back and forth. And this thing's just going back and forth, back and forth. It seemed like something didn't want me there.
It crept silently around the back of the tent, every step deliberate and slow, as if hunting, waiting for the perfect moment to strike from the shadows. Inside, the camper's breath caught, his heart beating fast as fear made him freeze, eyes wide, stuck in the quiet that felt like something was watching nearby.
A bear can't throw things. My dad didn't wake up. It was unbelievably terrifying. There was something smart out there specifically targeting me and trying to mess with me.
What was that sharp, chilling sound cutting through the stillness of the night? And where did that sudden scream come from, as if something unseen was watching, waiting just beyond the shadows? Hours later, miles away, another witness would experience a night she'd never forget. What began as harmless laughter quickly turned into pure terror. She remembered they had been horsing around, laughter filling the air, when suddenly the first scream grabbed through the night, sharp, urgent, and full of terror. Without a sound, her aunt moved silently from the living room to the bedroom, her heart pounding as she gripped the cold rifle. Every shadow felt like a threat, every breath heavy with dread, waiting for the danger lurking just beyond the door. She suddenly realized, oh God, something was terribly wrong. The large picture window was draped with thin, sheer curtains that barely concealed the shadowy shapes lurking just beyond, their unclear outlines twisting in the dim light like silent threats. When the creature kept pounding on the house, making a loud, scary noise, their hearts were racing fast with fear. They screamed as loud as they could, trying to keep up with the frightening sounds coming from outside. Something is out there, silent, watching, waiting. The question is, how close is it tonight? Footage, courtesy DMAX UK. The team travels to Virginia to investigate recent Bigfoot sightings reported by locals. They become especially interested in the encounter of a young girl who claims to have seen a Sasquatch near her home. He recalled being a child, playing outside late one night. Thinking it would be fun, he ran toward the end of the road, planning to surprise his mom. But as he came around the end of the building and started up the road, he froze.
Little, and we were playing outside late one night, and I figured I'd run around the end of the road and catch my mom and scare her at the end of the road.
Something was there. He looked up, and it was staring right at him. In the dim glow of the streetlight, he could see its long arms stretching out from the shadows. The thing was massive, far bigger than anything he had ever seen. Their eyes met, cold and empty, like looking into a dark hole. Its long twisted arms slowly emerged from the shadows, reaching like living shadows. The creature's huge dark shape seemed to swallow the night, a presence more frightening than anything he had ever known. What quiet, dark fear waits just beyond the trees, hiding in the shadows, ready to move.
When I come around the end of the building, started up the road, I looked up at it, it was looking at me. You could see long arms on it through the shadow of the lights. The thing was huge.
Heavy footsteps circled him, crunching softly over the dirt and leaves. Then came the breathing, slow, deep, and ragged, so close he could almost feel it in the air. He heard something else, buried in the heavy breathing, a voice, low, harsh, and angry. It didn't speak in words he could understand, but it growled through the silence, deep and unnatural, like it wanted him to hear it. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just nearby. It was hunting, and it was looking for him.
Then I started hearing it breathing. It was going. This thing was looking me eyeball to eyeball.
Me and a buddy of mine went down to Abrams Falls. He had never seen the falls, so I decided to, I'd take him down and show him what it looked like. We seen this thing stand up. It blew at us, which was like an elk call. I know what I seen.
Bobo, Cliff, and the team were heading to meet Debbie and Kirsten. Kirsten recalled that one quiet morning, as she went to pick up the mail, she caught sight of a mysterious creature lurking just to her right, an eerie presence that sent a chill down her spine. She recalled her encounter clearly. Walking down the hill with her music blasting, she was on her way to get the mail. As she climbed back up, a sudden movement caught the corner of her eye. She turned slowly and froze. A tall figure stood silently, watching her with an unsettling stillness. Panic grew through her, heart pounding as fear took hold. Without thinking, she screamed and ran up the hill as fast as she could.
Full volume, and I was going to go get the mail. And as I'm coming up from the hill, I noticed it like right out of the corner of my eye, and I looked over and I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's something standing there watching me. And it really scared me. I ran up the hill screaming. And as soon as I got up to the house, caught my breath, started crying because I've never seen anything.
When the investigators asked Kristen what she first thought the figure was, she admitted her mind raced to make sense of it. At first, she assumed it might be a man, tall, still, maybe just standing there watching. But something didn't feel right. The size, the shape, the way it stood so unnaturally still. Her breath caught. Oh my gosh, she thought, that's Bigfoot. But what exactly did she see that day? And was it really a Bigfoot? Could something that large and that quiet truly be out there, silently watching from the shadows? High above the world, where the air thins and silence feels endless, stories whisper through the snow. They speak of something ancient, a shadow that moves between ridgelines, leaving behind prints too large to belong to any man. Some call it a myth, others call it the Yeti. But to those who've seen it, the name carries weight and fear. In April of 2019, a startling report rippled across global news. The Indian Army claimed to have found massive footprints near Mount Makalu, deep in the Himalayas. The prints measured 32 inches long and 15 inches wide, far too large for any known species. Photos showed clean impressions trailing across the untouched snow. To the locals, the shape was unmistakable. It was the mark of the Yeti. The creature they described stands between 6 and 8 feet tall, its frame dense with coarse brown or reddish hair. Locals say it walks upright, with a heavy, deliberate gait and a head shaped like a cone. Western stories often paint it white, the abominable snowman. But in the Himalayas, witnesses speak of darker shades blending into rock and ice. Some call it a guardian, others call it a warning.
Physical descriptions are very consistent in terms of standing anywhere from 6 to 7 to 8 feet tall, completely covered in hair, and most importantly, walking on its hind legs like a man.
There's been this perception on the part of many people that the Yetis are white.
Yetis are almost always brown or reddish. The difference would be the Banjankri of Nepal. That Yeti is golden.
For decades, the Yeti and Bigfoot have been compared, as if they are kin, two faces of the same mystery. But their tracks tell a different story. Bigfoot prints look human-like, while Yeti tracks show a wide splayed shape, the big toe set apart like that of a great ape. And where Bigfoot is often described as curious, even gentle, the Yeti carries a far darker reputation.
This is the real me. This is the 15-year-old that saw him, not the educated 50-year-old who, can write it down on paper and logicalise it all and put it in a little box and make it nice and safe for myself. This is how I feel when I'm in the wood. The minute it goes dark, the minute it gets dusk, I'm gone. I can't do it. I think he's behind every tree. I think he's going to pop up in front of me. Why would he do it? He wouldn't do that. It's ridiculous. But that's the only way I can prove that I saw something that scared me this much.
In the mountains of Nepal and Tibet, tales of Yeti attacks are woven into generations of fear. One story tells of a man tossed into the air again and again, like prey in the claws of something powerful. Others speak of the Yeti's rage, of dismembered bodies found after a night of strange howls. Among Sherpa communities, the creature is both feared and revered, a spirit of the mountains, punishing those who trespass or show disrespect. They say the Yeti defends the sacred peaks, that if you break the silence or dishonor the land, it comes for you. But how could such a being survive where life barely clings to the rock? Some believe it descends at night, hunting through lower valleys before retreating into snowbound caves. Others think it hibernates, waiting for the air to grow cold again. The story of the Yeti first reached the wider world in 1951, when mountaineer Eric Shipton photographed enormous tracks near Mount Everest. The prints, 5 clear toes, broad and square, sparked what became known as Yeti fever. Expeditions followed, cameras ready, but sightings remained elusive. Only whispers, shapes in the fog, and footprints fading under snow. Still the Yeti endures, in stories, in photographs, and in the cold breath of those who've heard its cry echo through the peaks. Maybe it's a myth, maybe not, but in the Himalayas, where silence itself feels alive, some truths are meant to remain hidden. Deep in the swampy heart of southeast Texas, where alligators slink and pines tower over murky creeks, legends of Bigfoot thrive. Jerry the Wolfman Mills, a lifelong hunter, knows these bottomlands like his own shadow. From eerie wood knocks to a giant handprint on his truck, his chilling encounters paint a picture of Sasquatch, not as myth, but as a living, breathing force pacing the thickets. Step into the humid dark, where silence screams louder than howls, and something massive watches. We listen to his experience as shared by Wildman of the Woods. Jerry's first brush came hunting with a friend.
And all of a sudden I heard another one. And all of a sudden there was 3 different directions. And he was adamant. I said, well, I'll be dang, man. So he made one whoop at him and one whoop back. And I said, you are kidding me. Whatever. And we just went on about our business. But, that's in the back of your mind then, A few days go past. We go back out there to go hunting. And we separate, and I'm walking down a wide open levee top.
Wood knocks echoed from 3 directions, answered by a whoop that froze him. Days later, alone on a levee, he spotted fresh egret feathers floating, a bird freshly killed, its neck torn. Something paced him in the trees, matching his steps, stopping when he did. Gun raised, he shouted, but the shadow vanished. His buddy, 300 feet away, faced the same stalker. They found a muddy 12-inch footprint, water still pooling, too big for any man. Jerry knew then this was no bear.
And sure enough, we went back there, and I looked, and there was a footprint about that big and about that wide that I could put my number 12 Red Wing boot down into and not touch the sides, still had water running into it. Every other puddle around there was clear except that one. And that's where it had stepped and crossed over. And I realized then, oh my God, something was really out there.
Years later, in a deer blind, Jerry's eyes kept drifting to a tree line 150 yards out. Against habit, he scoped it. Nothing. Twice more, nothing. Then, a small figure, arms pumping, legs blurring like a roadrunner, bolted across, chasing prey. At dusk, a scream, no owl, ripped from a clear cut. Then, an 8-foot giant, maybe 700 pounds, strode across the road, its toes digging into a rise like it floated. Days later, a massive handprint smudged his truck's dusty window, fingers splayed, testing the glass. Venturing deeper with night vision and FLIR, Jerry's team heard the swamp go dead. Crickets hushed, frogs silent. A branch snapped, steps shadowed them, stopping when they did. No thermal trace, but the quiet screamed presence. In a canoe trip to a storm-ravaged bayou, Jerry and a friend hit a hot spot.
Now, me and another friend of mine, he had discovered this really hot spot that nobody goes into. Since the storms and the dead trees, they didn't go in there anyhow. It's almost impenetrable now. But of course, me and my buddy, he knows where it's at. Let's go. So we went, and we had to take a boat to get to it.
Shapes flickered on fell IR, gaps between trees closing and opening. A limb smashed 20 yards off, their boat dragged ashore, paddles tossed. They fled, lights on, pretending calm, but the message was clear. Too close. These swamps, where natives drew hairy giants on cave walls, hold secrets older than settlers. Creeks are Sasquatch highways, but reservoirs threaten this world, drowning deer, turkey, and Bigfoot alike. Jerry, tied to Twin Rivers Wolf Sanctuary, urges saving these lands. As the bayou whispers and something steps through the dark, one question lingers. Will you hear the knock before it's too close? In the rugged wilds of British Columbia's Harrison Hot Springs, where mountains hug misty lakes and gravel roads twist through dense forests, Sasquatch rules the shadows. Known for the most Bigfoot sightings in Canada, this land hums with eerie tales of hairy giants. A hunter's strange howl, a towering figure on railroad tracks, and native stories fuel the chase. Armed with a camera and grit, Angelo is on the hunt for proof, stumbling on moved wood, a massive footprint, and a rock thrown at his car. He shares his journey on his channel, Exploring with Angelo. Is the hairy man of the woods watching? In 1970, a teen working a logging road near Chilliwack.
I said to Harold, sitting next to me, "What are they saying?" He said, "Sasquatch, Sasquatch." He said, "What's that?" So they pointed ahead, and about 500 meters ahead, there was a big thing standing on the railroad tracks. Now, the 2 railroad tracks are still there, and the ditch is still there too. And in one step, it stepped across the railroad tracks. It didn't jump. It was upright, and it stepped across the ditch, and then it stopped in the middle of the road.
Saw something unforgettable. A massive figure stepped across railroad tracks in one stride, paused on a wide gravel road, and stared back before sprinting off. It didn't jump, it stepped, he recalls, describing an upright beast too big for a bear. The native crew shouted, "Sasquatch!" and fled, their fear sealing the moment's truth. Decades later, at Sasquatch Provincial Park, strange signs pile up. Near Hicks Lake, a heap of sticks looks oddly placed, not like a campsite prep. A dark shape, tall as a tree, flashes behind a trunk, bigger than any bear, upright, gone in a blink. Bears don't walk like that, the hunter mutters, heart racing, finding no trail or reason for anyone to be there.
Possibly a bear, but on its hind legs? No, I don't think that makes sense. Bears don't walk on their hind legs. They go on all fours. Okay. There's no real trail here, so I don't see why anybody would be back here. I don't see anything.
Further up, near Rainbow Falls, a rock smacks the car's passenger side on a barren dirt road.
Have to stop, but then apparently drive in reverse, and I can't even like really turn around. Oh, got static. Stupid radio. Oh. Okay. Looks like it keeps going.
No trees overhead, no dents, just a loud thud. Moments later, a dark figure moves on a cliff face, too tall for a human, too swift for chance. Bigfoot throws rocks, the hunter recalls from viral videos, pulse pounding as he scans the empty ridge.
It looked like something was moving, but there's a lot of trees out there, so it's like by where that rock is, it looked like someone was up there for a second. Who the hell would be up there, though? That's like a crazy cliff face. What if it's possible that, so Bigfoot apparently throws shit at people? There was like this nighttime video that I...
Backtracking to a disturbed spot, the evidence mounts. Wood piles, dragged uphill, form a path-like line, unlike any bear's work. A wet, massive footprint twice the size of a man's sits nearby, fresh in the mud. No animal stacks wood like this, he says, camera shaking. The forest falls silent. No birds, no wind, just the weight of something watching. From native carvings to modern tracks, Harrison's forests whisper of Sasquatch. As night falls and musty odors drift, the question isn't if Bigfoot exists, it's how close he's standing right now. Deep in America's wild forests, where shadows hide secrets, Bigfoot sightings spark fear and wonder. Robert, shaken by his own 2024 encounter, digs into 3 chilling video clips that might prove Sasquatch is real. From thermal shadows in Washington to a leaping giant in Russia and a forest stalker in Oregon, these moments shared on Cabin in the Woods, backed by tracks and expert eyes, challenge doubt. Are these fleeting glimpses the truth we've been hunting? In Grays Harbor, Washington, on October 30th, 2013, John and Ben Brown borrowed a FLIR thermal camera from the Olympic Project to hunt for Bigfoot on their land. That night, just before midnight, they caught a 7-foot, 4-foot wide figure glowing hotter than the nearby cow, but distinct in shape. Tracks, 16.5 inches long, were cast at the site, matching reports of howls and twisted trees. Skeptics point to the camera shutting off, but the FLIR manual notes battery display issues with non-rechargeable cells, explaining the cutoff. Phil Poling, a skeptical investigator, mapped the scene and admitted it could be real. The figure's stillness, a known Sasquatch trait, and lack of profit motive make a hoax unlikely. In Russia's Adygia Republic, January 2015, amateur Yeti hunters filmed a tall, dark figure leaping through snowy woods. Its long arms and flexing back muscles, visible in zoomed frames, defy human motion. Tracks were spotted but not cast, and the clip's raw, shaky quality suggests surprise, not staging.
Видел, как он своими лапами машет? Смотри, вон. 2 метра рост. Йо. Я боюсь. Надо отдать эту съемку в НТВ. Чрезвычайное положение. Все, пошли за ним.
The Caucasus, a hotspot for Almasty lore, adds weight, as does the figure's size against trees. Critics cite blurry footage and missing raw files, but no one's claimed tampering in a decade, and the group's lack of fame or gain bolsters authenticity.
The subject also appears to have a natural gait. It looks like it's walking with a heavy, forward-leaning stride that believers argue shows muscle movement rather than stiff costume fabric. When attempting to scale the subject against the trees, even in these highly compressed versions, the figure seems taller and broader than any average human would compared to the surrounding trunks.
A bear in the frame underscores the wild setting. Paul Freeman, a former Forest Service patrolman, filmed a massive figure in Oregon's Blue Mountains on August 20th, 1992. Chasing tracks near Daduct Spring, he caught an 8-foot creature brushing a 16-foot tree, later verified by a game warden.
Oh, there he goes. Jesus.
Freeman's casts, showing dermal ridges and mid-tarsal breaks, stunned anthropologists like Dr. Grover Krantz and Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who called them too detailed to fake.
And so I'm looking at this stuff and I'm thinking, how could it possibly do this? There's too much anatomical detail, which, as I would describe, point out the things that were impressing me. It was like, he didn't have a clue what I was talking about.
Critics question Freeman's past and the shaky footage, but his wilderness expertise and years of evidence collection counter hoax claims. The figure's fluid gait in rough terrain resists costume mimicry. These clips, tied to tracks, expert analysis, and raw context, stand firm against doubt. No fame or fortune drove these witnesses, only a quest for truth. As forests whisper and cameras flicker, one question lingers: is Bigfoot closer than we dare believe? In the foggy depths of Washington's Gifford-Pinchot National Forest, where creeks roar and ancient trees whisper warnings, a chill hangs heavy. Yakima natives call it Skookum Valley, as shown on Salish Sasquatch, and warn people to stay out. Here, campgrounds buzz with Sasquatch hunters, but silence falls when something stirs. Last Christmas Eve, 2 hikers vanished into the wilds, their bodies found miles from their truck, sparking whispers of more than bad luck.
Up here were the 2 hikers on December 24th, Christmas Eve last year. This is where they passed away at. This is right where they were at, and this is right where they brought him out at. So none of us locals can figure out. As soon as we heard this story, even my son-in-law, people I know, we were like, this is absolute crazy.
Audio howls, branch snaps, and a debunked butt crack photo fuel the hunt. But the real horror: unseen eyes in the dark. A burning curiosity drives the search, sparked by rooftop tent scares and fleeting glimpses. Weekends blur into quests. What hurts them? How do they heal? Audio recorders hidden on trails of least resistance capture the unknown.
First night, I'm going to test a theory of putting my audio recorder on this trail right here. This trail is kind of outside of camp, goes for miles. And why wouldn't a Sasquatch use this trail? It's a path of least resistance. So I'm going to put my audio on this trail, just leave it out the first night.
One night, across a creek 200 yards out, a device snags howls that echo human yet bigger, cutting off as phones flip to record. It sounded like it sat right across the river, yelling our way, one hunter recalls. Elk? Wolves? Or something watchful?
We woke up at like 4:30 this morning, and actually I originally thought it was someone at one of the other camps screaming. And then I started thinking maybe it was a wolf or something, but it sounded kind of human-like but bigger. And then when my wife went out to go to the bathroom, I came out, you could tell it was basically it sounded like it was sitting right across the river, like yelling this way. And then as soon as I got my phone out to record, it stopped. Went for an hour straight though.
Dawn breaks with unease. Logs climb to remote stumps. Trail cams primed where a prior setup caught a prowler circling, then bolting with the device. Creep factor spikes near the hiker's fate. December 24th, 2024. 2 men, 59 and 37, parked here for a day visit. Dressed wrong for winter, they crossed a flood stage creek, freezing, thigh-high, then plunged through a blowdown no sane soul would. Separated on a ridge 700 feet apart, bodies taken out by ropes and chainsaws through brush.
We had just a little skiff of snow on the ground, and these guys were not dressed for winter conditions.
They were dressed for a day visit, which was their plan.
Yeah, just a day visit. So they had parked up here in this area, and they went down this road right here. And if you guys want to look down there.
You want to go that way?
They were found about 2 miles from this location.
Coast Guard from 120 miles away airlifted them via FLYR, silencing locals. No names released, no why they came answers. FedEx workers from Portland, Bigfoot seekers. The valley's secrecy screams cover up.
Because there's not too many people other than locals that know about this and what's around here and what's going on in this valley. I heard that they worked for FedEx out of Portland, but one guy was 59, one guy was 39 or 37, something like that. The whole thing is just kind of bizarre about really what happened in here.
Whispers turned to speculation. Wrong calls lured them. Natives shun this spot for a reason. No birds, no crickets, just cracks, 3 in a row. Audio yields a rain-soaked howl, analyzed by a military cryptolinguist as high-probability Sasquatch, resonant, too loud for owls, thriving when humans hide indoors. Metallic clangs echo from afar, defying distant camps.
They weren't dressed for it.
I haven't heard any animals at all here.
No, there's no sound at all in here because this valley.
Factor here for sure.
I was told
there's a certain creep factor here for sure.
Something's not off.
Yeah.
Because I haven't heard a bird, haven't heard any crickets, I haven't heard.
But we did hear cracks when we came in, didn't we?
Yeah,
we heard 3 different cracks.
That doesn't surprise me. Off to your left.
No squirrels.
The hunt presses on. A butt crack photo, dark shape downhill amid branch breaks, draws a return. Zoomed by an accidental snap from a video switch, screamed Sasquatch. But boots hit ground, a stump, plain as day. Always check. They laugh, though the whisper in the woods mid-hike chills spines. Nearby, an X of high broken trees balances unnaturally, hinting deliberate design. Creeks yield no prints. A walk through water?
That one's balancing on this tree and this one's balancing on that tree. Huh. Very interesting. What if they just didn't follow the creeks but actually walked through them? Because nothing is leaving any prints in this.
Uneventful nights end with pack up, but the forest stirs. The forest is still alive at 2 to 3 a.m. with snaps of thick brush, whoops silencing night. Owls flee for hours, returning tired. Too big for owls, the Guardian mutters after 6 months.
Definitely in the night around 2 and 3 in the morning, there's a lot of breakage. Like heavy trees. Like thick brush. It doesn't sound like something that's breaking easy, and I see it in the next day. A couple hours later, if we're lucky, I'll hear the owls come back out. Very, very concerning sounds after 6 months here.
Are you sure they're owls?
Hell no, I'm not sure they're owls. Too big to be an owl.
As valleys fall quiet and howls pierce rain, one question haunts the locals. What claim those hikers, and is it calling you next?
Here it is. But he believed that was a Sasquatch. What I find is interesting is that it's during rain. So was my vocal that I caught in March. It was during rain. Like they feel comfortable or something.
Footage courtesy Animal Planet. In a region not typically associated with Bigfoot sightings, reports are flooding in. and judging by the number of hands raised, something unusual is happening here. A man recalls his strange encounter just north of town in a small area called Ridgeville. It was early morning, still dark, and he was doing his usual paper route, driving alone along a quiet road. As he came around a corner and pulled up to a mailbox to drop off a newspaper, something unexpected happened. A large figure stepped out near the edge of the road, right in front of his car. At first, he wasn't sure what he was looking at, but as it turned to face him, he saw it clearly. The creature was huge. He said its shoulders were extremely wide, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. It stood tall, silent, and still.
It occurred in a town north of me in Ridgeville. I was delivering newspapers real early in the morning, and I was driving around the corner, and I come up to a tube to put the paper in, and I saw this thing. Turned around, looked at me, and it was big. I mean, it had shoulders were at least like this.
Then it locked eyes with him. He described the feeling of that eye contact as deeply unsettling. He didn't just feel watched. He felt like the creature was angry, like he had interrupted something he wasn't supposed to see. His hands were shaking. Since fear is already shown, his hands were shaking on the wheel. Even after putting distance between himself and the creature, he couldn't calm down. To this day, he remembers the look in its eyes, and the feeling that whatever it was, it didn't want to be seen.
Just freaked me out because I got the feeling that it was kind of angry. I was like disturbing it kind of, and I just floored it and got out of there. I was kind of shaken up.
But what was it? Why was it there, alone, in the dark, standing in the middle of a quiet road no one else was on? Was it just passing through? Or has it been here all along, watching from the woods? The man never went back to that route again, and he's not the only one with a story. What hides in the shadows just beyond Ridgeville? Not far from Ridgeville, another local resident shares a chilling story of his own encounter. This witness, a longtime hunter, recalls a night deep in the woods when something unusual crossed his path. Unlike the man's sighting near the road, this one happened far from any signs of civilization. The hunter described hearing heavy footsteps and a low, guttural sound before catching a glimpse of a massive, shadowy figure disappearing between the trees.
Pretty much every day. I have been doing it for over 10 years, and around 11 o'clock one night, I had a road crossing. And I mean, it maybe took 2 or 3 steps, it was across the road, but I was within 40 feet of it. What struck me was the height of it. I mean, the thing must have been 8 to 8.5.
It was unlike any animal I've ever seen, he said. It moved with a strange, almost unnatural silence, but its size was impossible to miss. Stories like these raise questions about what might be lurking just beyond the edges of the known, and whether these encounters are connected. But that wasn't the only time something like this was seen. Another encounter, even darker, would soon follow. Flat Squatch Productions. Location, Western Pennsylvania. The secrets of Chestnut Ridge, rocks, howls, and the Bone Cave. In western Pennsylvania, along the rugged backbone of the Chestnut Ridge, the woods hold more than deer trails and hidden hollows. For decades, locals have whispered of strange lights, bone-chilling screams, and creatures that defy explanation. Few know this better than Dwayne, a man who has dedicated years to walking those ridges and listening to the night. His encounters read like a diary of the uncanny. The first encounter came in 2016 in Fayette County. Broad daylight, around 3:30 p.m. Dwayne was tracking signs along a fern-covered trail, documenting a massive 14-inch footprint, when something unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, a rock the size of a man's head flew past him, slamming into a nearby tree. Then came a scream, high, piercing, and powerful enough to shake the air itself. Like a woman screaming through concert speakers, he said. The sound rattled his chest. Instinct told him to run, but instead he charged uphill, hoping to see what made it. When he reached the ridge, the forest had gone dead silent. No movement, no wind, just the fading echo of that impossible scream.
So I thought I'd go back up there and see if any new activity might have been along that trail. So I'm walking and I go to where that track's at, which had been, the rain had obscured it. It was gone. So I kept walking on down. I went from here to about where that bush is right there. and I'm in ferns that are up to here, and as I get about there was an opening area that was devoid of any ferns, and right there was an equal 14x7 track.
This wasn't an isolated case. 4 years earlier, in 2012, just 5 miles from that same spot, Dwayne and 2 others were called to a family farm plagued by strange disturbances. Rocks were thrown near the father, dogs refused to go outside, and livestock acted terrified for weeks. That night, the team set up recorders by the property's fishing pond. For a while, everything was still, until a deep, guttural roar erupted from the ridge. It wasn't a coyote or a bear. The sound carried intelligence and anger. It froze us in place, Dwayne recalls. The frequency they later analyzed was unlike any known animal. Even more unsettling, when one of the men mimicked the noise, the creature answered back, closer each time before retreating into the dark. But that night brought more than sound. Hovering above the high-tension power lines was a fiery orange orb, glowing silently, about 3 feet across. It glided along the lines, vanished into the trees, then reappeared minutes later before fading beyond the ridge. To Dwayne, it was no illusion. It was as real as the ground under my feet, he insists.
Up until this thing let out this bellowing, deep guttural bellowing growl, roar, and it just did what the scream did. It echoed across his farm up on the ridge. We couldn't really tell exactly where it was coming from at first. And I'll send you the recording, because we luckily got some good recorded, and we run it through a audio spectrum analyzer, and we're able to.
Perhaps the most unsettling encounter came in March 2011, when Dwayne and his girlfriend discovered what locals later called the Bone Cave. At first, it looked like a shadow beneath a rock ledge, but inside lay scattered bones. Deer, porcupines, foxes, even skulls arranged neatly on shelves of stone. Over the next 2 years, Dwayne's team found at least 4 deer carcasses dragged inside and stripped to bone. Whatever lived there wasn't passing through. It was feeding, storing, maybe even nesting. It felt like stepping into a horror film, he recalls, but it was real. Despite game cameras and repeated visits, they never caught what used the cave. Only the chilling evidence remained. Piles of bones, stacked skulls, and the feeling of unseen eyes watching from the dark.
We walked closer, and I said, no, that's an actual cave. I said, it's an opening. There's something, we can go in it if it's possible. So we both carefully walked over to this opening, and sure enough, this opening was easily this high and this big. You could walk almost through it, just barely, like crouching down, you could walk through it. Well, the thing was, when you went through it, it dropped down, and then there was a rock precipice that went down about 20 feet, and you could see what looked like another cave opening.
Dwayne's stories of Chestnut Ridge weave together like threads in a larger mystery. Rocks hurled with impossible force, screams that split the air, roars recorded and analyzed but never explained, lights hovering above the treetops, and a cave that seemed to serve as both larder and lair for something far beyond a bear or cougar. For those who live in the shadow of the ridge, these aren't tales for campfires. They're warnings, whispered from one generation to the next.
Me and an ex-girlfriend were up there. I took her up, and she had a fascination with Bigfoot, and I wanted to show her the area that we had this activity happen. And while we were in the woods walking around like we're doing today, there's an outcrop rock mound formation, a big gathering of rocks in all kind of places, clusters of rocks, because it's a lot of sandstone rock and limestone rock formations in this area.
Because out here, when the sun dips and the ridges grow dark, you never truly know what's watching from the tree line. And if you're unlucky, or perhaps chosen, you might hear it scream.
The I Believe in Bigfoot project. Human testimony is fragile. Memory bends, details shift, and stories can be fabricated. But what happens when dozens of accounts point to the same details, the same creature, the same chilling presence in the woods? Are they all mistaken, or is there truth hidden among their words? David Barra, curator of the expedition. Bigfoot. Museum in Blue Ridge, Georgia, has spent over 40 years in the study. His fascination began as a child in Miami, watching reports of the Florida skunk ape flicker across nightly news broadcasts. They spoke of something more than a monkey. A towering man-like creature, larger, stronger, and stranger than any known animal. For David, it forced a hard question. Either eyewitnesses were lying, or what he was being taught in school about human evolution was missing something crucial. That conflict never left him.
We're talking about some kind of a huge man-like creature that was much bigger and faster and stronger than an ape or a gorilla, and it was roaming the woods. And some people were calling it a missing link, or I heard the caveman kept popping up. And at that time, I was in my schooling. I was learning about a little bit about anthropology and the theory of evolution, and I kept thinking how those two worlds were colliding hard.
Michael Cook's story, however, wasn't born from curiosity. It came from fear. At 16, skipping school to fish on a Kentucky riverbank, he heard something crash through the woods. At first, he thought it was a bear. But when the figure rose to its full height, towering over the trees, the truth cut through denial. He ran. To this day, he recalls the sound of trees snapping like matchsticks, as something massive pursued him. He admits he felt a primal terror unlike anything a bear or elk could bring. Other witnesses describe similar encounters: giant figures with eyes glowing in the dark, rocks hurled over fences, and guttural roars so powerful they shook the air itself. One man remembered seeing a 9-foot-tall shape framed against apple trees. Another spoke of trees ripped from the ground and hurled like sticks. The detail repeated again and again. Strength beyond reason.
I was 9 years old. That happened in '74. I was 9. And whatever, that fence row was growed up in rose bushes, wild rose bushes. That's why they raised fences back in. They had a fence in the middle, but it was wild rose bushes all the way down it. He couldn't get through it, but he was on the other side of the fence. So I said, I told you, you better answer. You're scaring me. I said, I'll go on if you want me to. And then it just started throwing rocks. These rocks started coming over the fence. Whack! Woof, wham, broken tree limbs, splat, bat.
Not all accounts end with escape. Carolyn Allen described something far darker. Her family dogs, penned inside a tall, secure fence, were found lifeless, necks broken, bodies drained of blood, and laid gently on the ground. There were no signs of struggle, no damage to the fence, just silence and death. Could such precision and control belong to a simple predator? Or was it evidence of something beyond ordinary nature? Testimonies stretch across decades, states, and generations. Some speak of sightings in the swamps of Florida. Others describe screams echoing through Appalachian ridges. Many recall details that overlap: glowing eyes, overpowering stench, immense size, and the strange silence that falls before an encounter.
And I'm camera blind. I'm looking at my screen, all I can see to walk by in the pitch black night is the camera screen. And then you see something in the camera screen, and when you look up, now you're camera blind, but now you can see this outline of this huge black object standing behind this little thin tree, if you will, that just doesn't make sense.
Skeptics argue that memory fails, fear exaggerates, and stories spread like wildfire. Yet for the witnesses, these moments never fade. They speak of sleepless nights, of being haunted by eyes that watched from the dark. One even admitted he could not retell his story without breaking down in tears, even decades later. Are these testimonies proof of Bigfoot's existence? Or are they fragments of fear, stitched together into legend? The question lingers, and each account leaves us with the same uneasy pause. If so many people are wrong, then what exactly is stalking the forests of America? Footage. Courtesy. Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization. Some encounters leave you questioning what you saw. Others stay burned into memory so clearly you can't dismiss them. For Lori, a quiet Kentucky road became the setting for two moments that changed how she saw the world. The first happened when she was 16, barely old enough to drive. It was dusk on Salt Rock Road. The sky still held light, but the headlights of her car hadn't yet been switched on. As she rounded a curve, something stepped off the road and disappeared down the embankment. A flash, a shape, broad, upright, and gone. She told her grandmother she'd seen Bigfoot. They told her she'd seen a deer, but she knew the difference. It was bigger, taller, not the backside of any animal she knew. Reluctantly, she let her uncle convince her it was an elk. Yet even then, something inside her whispered, it wasn't.
And I thought, I just saw Bigfoot. So I go back to my grandma's house and I tell them, I'm like, I just saw Bigfoot. And they're like, no, Lori, you saw a deer step off the road. I was like, no. This was way bigger than a deer. This was not a deer's backside stepping off the road. Like this was something much bigger.
Years passed. Lori moved on. But one night about 12 years ago, the road brought it back. She was driving on Highway 89 North toward McKee, her daughter in the passenger seat. It was dark now, headlights cutting through curves. As she came around one bend, her lights caught a figure on the far side of a poplar tree. This time, it didn't run. It stood upright, huge but not massive, slender. Its long arms nearly reached its knees. The fur was gray, flat against the body, not fluffy like a dog. In that moment, she slammed on the brakes. Her daughter froze. Lori's heart pounded. She had known since she was 16 she'd seen something. Now it was standing there, still as stone. She shouted to her daughter, "Do you see it? Can you see it?" But her daughter saw nothing. In a panic, Lori put the truck in reverse, trying to get another glimpse. As the red glow of her taillights swept across the figure, its eyes seemed to flash red. She didn't think it was supernatural, just the reflection of brake lights. But it never moved. It didn't run. It didn't even flinch at the sound of her loud truck.
And this thing, it had to be at least 8 foot tall. It was huge because the branch that was down, I was like, oh my gosh, its head was almost to the branch. And I was like standing beside this tree when I went. But there was a deer path. But this wasn't a deer. I mean, that's not what this was. But as far as like giving you like facial features or anything like that, all I know is I seen something big and hairy on 2 feet.
Her daughter locked the door and began crying, begging her not to back up further. "It's on my side," she screamed. Lori stopped. Fear outweighed curiosity. They drove on to her sister's house, shaken. Later, her father grabbed a rifle and went to the spot. Nothing remained. In daylight, Lori returned to the tree. The branch where its head had been came nearly 8 feet off the ground. A deer path ran nearby. But this wasn't a deer. It wasn't built like the sketches of bulky Bigfoot she'd seen. It was mallee gray, slender, more like the wood devils whispered about in New Jersey folklore. 2 encounters, years apart. One flash at dusk, one silent figure at night. Both left the same question hanging. What exactly stands watching from the trees, tall enough to brush the branches and bold enough to never run? Footage, courtesy, mysterious unknown location, Coatesville, Pennsylvania. Tonight, we step into the mind of a man who has carried his story in silence for more than 3 decades. Curtis Reeves is a Navy veteran, a husband, a father, and the keeper of an encounter that began in the woods of Coatesville, Pennsylvania, in 1987. It was meant to be a bonding trip, a father and son moment in the quiet stillness of a Pennsylvania winter morning. 11-year-old Curtis had just earned his hunting license, eager to follow in his father's footsteps. The air was cold, the ground still damp from the previous night's frost, and the full moon hung like a lantern over the forest.
Back in 1987, he was out hunting with his dad on a property in Pennsylvania, and they ran up on a Bigfoot creature, and this thing was less than 10 feet away from him. He heard a voice in his head tell him to take a shot at this creature, and he did. We're going to get into every single detail, but since that night, he's had a lot of strange encounters throughout his life, and we're going to talk about all of them.
Curtis's father led him down the dark trail, the beam of his flashlight bouncing between trees marked with reflective thumbtacks. They reached a clearing, and his father positioned him near a tree. "Stay here," he said, "and just watch my light." Curtis stood silently, alone for the first time in those woods. He watched as his father's light flashed 3 times, a signal from up the trail. Then, as the beam faded, Curtis heard it, a sudden, sharp crackling sound, like bubble wrap popping all around him. Something was moving.
So he walked up in the woods, he starts clearing a spot at this tree, and he said, "Okay, stand here, just watch my light." He went back out, started walking back up the trail where we came from. And I'm like, where's he going, you know? So I'm watching him, then I see him come in the patch of woods. He flashed his light 3 times. So I'm looking to my left. Directly on my right, I hear a bunch of crackling, like bubble wrap.
He turned his head toward the thicket and saw nothing. Then came the first step, and then another, slow, heavy, deliberate. Through the brush, a pitch-black figure began to take shape, its silhouette outlined against the faint moonlight. At first, Curtis thought it might be a cow or a horse wandering out of a nearby field. But as it drew closer, its outline made less and less sense. The shoulders were broad, the head was elongated. There were no eyes reflecting light, no sound of breathing, no snort of an animal. It was like watching something glide, Curtis remembers. There was no sound, no crunching of leaves. It was just there, moving toward me. And then he heard it, not with his ears, but inside his mind, a voice. Calm, commanding like a stern father giving an order. "Shoot it!" Curtis shouldered his .410 shotgun and fired. The flash of the shot lit up the clearing. His ears rang. His father's voice screamed his name from up the trail. But when his vision cleared, the thing was gone. In the pale moonlight, Curtis saw only a glimpse of a massive silver-gray shoulder gliding silently away, almost as if it were on an invisible escalator. He expected to find tracks, blood, any sign of what had just happened. There was nothing, no footprints, no broken branches, no trace at all.
Got directly in front of me, and I can see the width of the shoulders, I guess, and a long, snout. So I'm saying, is this a horse walking sideways? It didn't make sense, and it was ugly. I mean, how this thing, soon as I shot, the flash went, I hear my dad yelling my name. Kurt, Kurt. I mean, loud. And I'm bolt. But when I got my sight back.
When the sun finally rose, his father walked the area carefully. He found one matted down spot where something heavy had stood, then turned to Curtis. "Let's go." And just like that, they left. They never hunted that area again.
The whole time we heard crackling, we heard walking, and he's looking around. Now I'm paying attention to his demeanor, and he's like on high alert. But I paid attention to how many steps it took him to get out there. Now I can see there's a field in front of us. We was in a patch of woods that was probably about 30 feet wide.
Years later, Curtis would learn the truth. On Father's Day in 2022, decades after that morning in the woods, Curtis's father finally confessed what he had seen. "I had a feeling something was watching me," he said. "I stopped, scanned the trees, and a big black head peeked out from behind a tree. I turned and ran. For Curtis, the revelation was earth-shattering. All those years he thought he had been left alone by chance. Now he wondered if his father had led him directly to the creature, or if the creature had been waiting for him all along. But Curtis's encounters didn't end there. After joining the Navy, he began experiencing something even stranger: UFO sightings. Stationed aboard the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower in 2005, he watched a silver craft hover silently over the USS Roosevelt before shooting straight up into the sky. Years later, when declassified Navy reports revealed that pilots had seen unidentified objects around the Roosevelt during that same period, Curtis felt vindicated. He believes the events are connected: the Bigfoot encounter, the voice in his head, the UFOs. Once you see one of these things, The odds of seeing something again go way up, Curtis says.
So it was up near where our gas tank is, where the delivery guy would come up. But I'm like, this guy is not this heavy, you know what I mean, to be leaving these kinds of tracks. So we left that alone. We didn't worry about it. So one evening, me and my son was talking in the kitchen, in this room that I'm in right now, this window here. We're talking. He had his back towards this room.
Even today, decades later, the encounters continue. After building his home in Bowmansville, Pennsylvania, Curtis discovered large bones stacked neatly on his lot and 2 massive footprints pressed deep into the wet ground after a storm. At night he hears knocks, loud bangs against his house, and the unmistakable sense that he and his family are being watched.
What would have happened if I wouldn't have listened to that voice? That's the first time I ever heard that voice. As stern, it didn't yell. It was stern, like a father figure. Shoot it. And I did. I heard that voice again in 2000. I was in a bad place. Said, it's time for you to leave and go to the Navy. But this time, I'm questioning it or talking.
Curtis no longer hunts. He no longer ventures into deep woods. He keeps his blinds shut at night. Even with a firearm, he says, I don't go out there. They know more about me than I know about them. His story leaves more questions than answers. Was it a flesh and blood creature that night in 1987? Or something else? Something that could glide silently through the forest and vanish without a trace? Whatever the answer, Curtis believes listening to that mysterious voice saved his life. And maybe that's the most haunting part. The idea that something out there, whether guardian or predator, knew he was there that night and chose to let him walk away. Footage, courtesy, Wild Man of the Woods. Location, Southeast Texas, swamps. Deep in the remote swamps of Southeast Texas, where the air is thick and the night sings with frogs and crickets, Jerry the Wolfman Mills has spent a lifetime hunting, fishing, and walking the woods. He's a respected elder and a reputable person of the society, a seasoned outdoorsman, and one of the few who still remembers the land as it used to be. His testimony is raw and unfiltered, a window into a world where man and mystery meet. It began with an invitation from a friend to go hunting on his deer lease. "Oh, by the way," his friend casually said, "there's Bigfoots out here." Jerry laughed it off, until the first wood knock echoed through the trees, then another, and then a third, coming from 3 different directions. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. His friend let out a whoop, and somewhere in the dark, one answered back.
Well, a friend of mine from work took me out to his deer lease, and he told me, "Oh, by the way, there's Bigfoots out here." I'm like, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah." The guy's believable. He's a friend of mine. Next thing you know, we walk out onto the property and wood knock. He said, "You hear that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That was a squatch. That was a wood knock." Well, I've heard of wood knocks. I said, "For real?" And all of a sudden, I heard another one. And all of a sudden, there was from 3 different directions. And he was adamant. Well, I'll be dang, man.
Days later, Jerry returned to hunt again. This time, he was alone, walking along an open levee when he noticed fresh white feathers scattered across the water, drifting gently in the breeze. Something had killed an egret moments before. The kill site was still wet, still bleeding. Then came the sound of heavy pacing in the tree line beside him. Whatever it was, it matched his every step. Jerry didn't run. He pretended not to notice, hoping the creature would reveal itself. When it didn't, he finally raised his gun and shouted a warning into the woods. "If you're in there, you better come out, because I will shoot." Silence. Then, after several tense minutes, the pacing stopped. But his unease grew when his hunting partner called from a nearby stand. Something was pacing him too. Jerry made his way around to him and, sure enough, they found a single massive footprint in the mud, wider than Jerry's size 12 boot, water still running into it. It was his first real oh my God moment with Sasquatch.
And I got down there, and sure enough, he's doing the same thing I was doing. He's doing like this, and he turned his gun over there. Well, it got down to a ditch. I stepped out onto the pipeline, and he looked up, and it stopped. Well, he walked maybe 15, 20 feet and waited on me, and there was a footprint about that big and about that wide that I could put my number 12 bit of red wing.
Over the years, Jerry would have many more. One evening, from his deer blind, he couldn't shake the feeling he was being watched. His eyes kept returning to a spot along the tree line until, finally, a small figure, child-sized but running on two legs, bolted across the clearing at an inhuman speed. "I've never seen anything accelerate like that," Jerry recalled. He knew then he wasn't alone.
Jerry, the Wolfman Mills, encounters with the Sasquatch of the swamps of East Texas.
Of course, I've been going hunting since I was a little kid with my papa, and we always told, you never don't be sticking your gun out there and looking around through your scope like it's binoculars, they can see the gun sticking out.
Later that night, as dusk settled, Jerry and his partner packed up to leave. From across a clear cut came a loud, guttural sound. Not a coyote, not an owl, but something deep and primal. They froze. Then from just 20 yards away, a towering figure stepped onto the road. She was huge, 8 feet tall, 600 or 700 pounds, and crossed the road in just 2 effortless strides. The two men could only watch as she melted back into the woods. Days later, Jerry discovered a giant handprint on the back of his dusty truck. The thumb turned at an odd angle, as though something had leaned over to peer inside.
There's this big old handprint, and it's about like this, and the thumb comes out like this and turns straight up, except it's big. Shoot. 20 yards from the truck, maybe, and walked right across the road, right in front of us at a leisurely pace. She was hitting about 6-foot strides, and it didn't take but 2 to cross that road. And there was a little berm on the edge of the road where, dozers come in and push.
But perhaps the most terrifying moment came years later, when Jerry and a friend paddled a canoe into an isolated bayou known for activity. Almost immediately, they had contact. Wood knocks, movement on thermal, and the unmistakable sound of their aluminum boat being tampered with. When they returned, the boat had been dragged onto shore, their paddles laid neatly in front of it, as if to let them know, we were here.
But of course, me and my buddy, he knows where it's at, let's go. So we went, and we had to take a boat to get to it. I don't know, we was probably a mile, maybe a mile and a half, 2 miles down the bayou, and there's just nothing out there. We get up in there, we're sitting there, we're probably 30 feet or so from the boat, but you can't see the boat because it's dark and we're in the thicket in the yopons, and it curls off.
Jerry doesn't believe these creatures are supernatural. They're just real, he says. They've been here as long as people have been here. And his words carry weight. Because once you've heard them, and once you've seen what Jerry has seen, you'll never look at the dark woods of Texas the same way again. In a world where stories fade too quickly, it's voices like these, from seasoned hunters, elders, and even those who've served in the Navy, that remind us Bigfoot isn't just a campfire tale. These are first-hand accounts, lived and remembered by people who have walked those dark woods and faced the unknown. As our witnesses grow older, their words become even more valuable. Hold on to them, because one day, they might be the only proof we have left.
So what do we make of it all? 5 different people, 5 different places, yet every story carries the same shadow, a presence in the woods that defies explanation. Some say it's just an undiscovered primate. Others insist it's something darker, something that chooses when and how to be seen. But one thing is certain, those who've come face to face with it are never the same again. Maybe Bigfoot isn't just hiding from us. Maybe it's deciding who gets to walk away. The question is, would you?